Welcome into Five Clubs. It is a Tuesday. It is July. It is July 1st. Welcome in on Golf Channel. You can also listen. That is Channel 92. It is SiriusXM's PGA Tour Radio. I am Gary Williams. It's great to have you with us. And of course, this program is always brought to you by Century Insurance, right by you. They invest in golf in great ways. Their relationship with the USGA, with the First Tee as well. We thank them for their great support. Their expertise, it is empathetic expertise on their part. How about Golf Pride? I was thinking about it. I just had a putter grip in my hand, the reverse taper putter grip. And again, I'm working on almost 2 years with that putter grip. Haven't had to change it. Not because I want a different putter grip, because the materials are so good. They have more variety. That's why they're trusted by more players at every level than any other grip company in the world. If you want this crew neck, this Crown Comfort crew neck from Peter Millar, you can have it. You can have anything that they've got because they are a lifestyle brand. They've refined performance, luxury, and style better than anybody for more than 2 decades. And how about Station 21, the new restaurant that is going to open this fall at this place? No, this place. Yes, Pinehurst in November. They're always adding more for you because it's not just all the great golf that they've got. They've got 10 golf courses. Number 11's construction is coming soon. That is Core Crenshaw. And looking forward to that new restaurant right there at the main resort at Pinehurst, the cradle of American golf. And if anybody's wondering here on July 1st, if Ben Griffin's going to play golf this week, you better believe he is. I was looking at the field for the John Deere Classic, and I said, of course Ben Griffin is playing. When you're on a heater, you stay on the heater. 6 straight top 14s. He's made $8.1 million. He's having a breakout year. This will be his 23rd start. He is the Tom Kite of 2025. Those are the guys back in the 70s and 80s who never took weeks off. And one other thing before we get into the guts of this program on this Tuesday, I've always said that nothing good comes in the mail anymore. Think about it. Every Wednesday back in the day at 326 Grandview Circle, I would always get Sports Illustrated and the Sporting News and Sport Magazine. Those don't come anymore, but golf is art. Jeff Marsh, I'm so happy for him, proud of him, and this is glorious. If you love golf, Golfer's Journal is fantastic. Golf is art when it comes to looking at wonderful still photographs of all these wonderful places around the country. That is edition number 3. Thank you to Jeff and his great work and his passion. He's actually covering the John Deere this week. All right. Brendan Porath is going to be with me here, one of the Five Club's favorites. Last time we had him on, he was with Andy Johnson. We were at Oakmont for the U.S. Open. They've got a new TV show. We'll talk about that, plus a number of other items with him as well. But I'm going to start today on a couple of different fronts, and one of them is LIV. And the other ties into the PGA Tour because we didn't get to it yesterday, and it's not a question of not wanting to. It has nothing to do with that. It's just simply prioritizing things. But LIV had a week last week that is the kind of week that if you're part of it or support it or like it, that you go, well, that's encouraging. They had large crowds at their event in Texas. And they had a leaderboard that you never know how things conspire, particularly when you shorten the competition of 54 holes. I think when you have 72 holes, that's why I always have associated championship golf with 72 holes of stroke play as a competition. They play 54 holes and they have shotguns. And that's not my thing, but that's their thing. And they're trying to be different. And they played loud music, and some people love that. But they had crowds there. And yesterday, and I think it was Sunday night into Monday, the Sports Business Journal, Josh Carpenter, who's been on this program a couple of times, and Josh is carving out, I think, a really good space when it comes to covering golf, especially as it relates to media news and news as it relates to rights. And he was the first one to get hold of what was an internal memo delivered to LIV's members and people involved with LIV Golf. And it's not finalized, but it's likely that their schedule next year is going to look like what is going to be a start of the year where they're going to start outside of the United States. That's not new. That's not different. That's what they've done. They'll start in Riyadh, and then they're going to go to Singapore, and then they're going to go to Adelaide, which again, Australia's been very, very good to them. So the fact that LIV has already delivered what is going to be their 2026 schedule to their membership, and again, not finalized, not public, not official, but likely. We knew that it was not going away, but it leads to the question of where is it all going? And I think what we thought originally was they were intending to be disruptive, and they had Greg Norman as their front man, and not easy to be comfortable or find comfort in being the disruptor, because being that and assuming that position means that you're going to take a lot of shots, and he certainly did. And I'm not certain whether he enjoyed it or not, but he kept a stiff upper lip and he moved forward, and now he's removed from his position, and now it's Scott O'Neill, who's a career person when it comes to being in the sports industry and being in essentially running and being involved in sports enterprises, and that's what LIV intends to be. So you wonder, are they going to be simply additive / alternative to the PGA Tour, or is there ever going to be some type of melding and some type of alliance to where LIV players can dip their toe back in the waters of the PGA Tour? And to some degree, and in my estimation, a lesser degree, because the lion's share of the audience, and the numbers bear it out, more people by a large volume consume the PGA Tour to live. And it's not entirely a fair fight because they don't have the distribution to the degree that the PGA Tour has. And even if they did, I don't think that would necessarily level the playing field. But it gets to where it might all be going, that I think LIV is going to exist in some form or another for the foreseeable future. And they are continuing to try to cultivate and build sponsorship and branding and advertising opportunities for their brand. And by rolling out a schedule that includes essentially the same number of events they had last year or this current year to the year that's coming up in 2026 means that, look, they're going forward. The question remains, to what degree are these two entities going to add to each other or to augment each other? And that gets me to the PGA Tour, because the PGA Tour, and we learned this, and again, back to Josh Carpenter of the Sports Business Journal. It wasn't his reporting, it's him advancing the reporting of WAXYZ. I read that and I thought to myself, is that really an affiliate? And I said that out loud, and it made me think of WKRP, which was a spectacular sitcom back in the late 70s, early 80s. Look it up. It was glorious. What a cast. Gordon Jump was the guy who owned the station. He was spectacular. I digress. WAXYZ reported on Sunday that the Rocket Classic that was just conducted at Detroit Golf Club, which now is under been taken over in terms of the golf course, a $16 million capital project of a renovation / restoration by Tyler Ray, who was on the program last week. He was on a bulldozer yesterday morning. He texted me, 6:30, I'm out here, I'm working. They're going to have a little more time. Why? Because the reporting of WXYZ in Detroit is that the Rocket Classic is going to get a date later on the PGA Tour schedule. It's not official yet, but it appears that they may be getting the date that has been the date that the Wyndham Classic up the road from us here in Charlotte in Greensboro, North Carolina, has had. That's the last event of the regular season. It's a good date. It's that date where it's the last opportunity to play your way into the FedEx Cup playoffs. And for the Wyndham Classic, that's been a windfall for them because they've gotten some players that they wouldn't otherwise have gotten who were outside of the number. And now the number is even more precious. It's now 70 getting into the FedEx Cup playoffs. So you have the likelihood of even higher profile players who find themselves not only in peril being outside of the 70, but just maybe inside it and trying to ensure a further path along. Which gets me to my last point, and I'm going to advance this with Brendan Porath, is that I think that the PGA Tour schedule, in particular, post-West Coast swing, needs to be completely retooled, refined, and I would even use the word overhauled, including the idea of if it is, in fact, the Rocket Classic that is going to get the last date of the regular season. The last Signature Series event currently in the construct of the PGA Tour schedule is the Travelers in June. I think the last Signature Series event should be the last regular season event on the PGA Tour schedule. And it shouldn't be 72, it should be 100 for the 70 to get into the playoffs. If you want to have a last month before you say NFL, college football, it's all yours. We'll live in an even more smaller, niche-y space than we currently reside in. Go ahead and make it a month and make it volatile and make it loud and start with the last regular season event being a season series event, Signature Series event that gives you that volatility with all those points and all of the idea of elevation, relegation that would exist in an environment like that. Those are the types of things that I would like to believe that Brian Rolap and the new PGA Tour, I'm not saying that he's bringing in an entirely new team, but as they look at the schedule, as it relates to media partners, how do we make this better? Make it different. And being different just doesn't necessarily naturally make it better, but I think it can be. All right, we're off. When we continue, Brendan Porath, he is the head of content for Fried Egg. They do it as good as anybody, and now, because they have done such great work, they now have a TV show. I knew that Andy and Brendan were built for television. Their show's on Wednesday on CBS Sportsnet. He's going to join me. Plus, today is a sneaky great day because 20 people are going to play in the Open Championship that weren't in the field before the day started, but when the day ends, 300 players for 20 spots at 4 locations across the UK. It's going on right now. It's not necessarily golf's longest day, but it's a hell of a good day. So we're going to update you on that, who's in those fields. They're about halfway through because it's lunchtime over there, 5 hours ahead. We will get to that to boot. All right, we're back with Brendan Porath on a Tuesday edition of 5 Club's Golf Channel and on Channel 92 Sirius XM's PGA Tour Radio. Back right after this. Back in on this Tuesday on 5 Clubs, it is Golf Channel. It's also on Sirius XM's Channel 92, that is PGA Tour Radio. And this segment brought to you by Peter Millar. If you go to their website right now, petermillar.com, if you don't know that they have swim trunks, if you're a guy and you need a swimsuit for the summer, it's July 1st, it's July 4th, I'm telling you, that is an example of the range that Peter Millar has. It is a lifestyle brand, so whatever you need, they've got you covered because performance, luxury, and style refined better than anybody for more than 2 decades. All right, joining me now, speaking of refined, he is now a TV guy. He's been podcasting, he's been a writer, he's been very good at all that. He's the head of content for Fried Egg. He's not been through hair and makeup, I don't know yet, but he will be tomorrow because their show is Wednesdays at noon. I'm speaking, of course, with Brendan Porath. Good morning, my friend. How you doing this morning?
Good morning. I'm great. Good morning, Gary. Thank you for having me. Definitely no hair and makeup today, tomorrow, anytime. The edges are still rough and still unrefined, for sure.
For people, and most people who are on this channel, Golf Channel, are not only abundantly aware of you guys, they know all the stuff that you're doing, they consume it, you have a big audience, but for people who may not, the TV show just launched, it's a reflection of all the great work. What do you want to give the TV viewer that maybe you don't already give them, which is most everything?
Well, it's obviously an opportunity to be a little more visual, right? The podcasts are more YouTube based, so we've gone that way in recent years with more visual elements. But obviously, CBS has been great to work with, and they were friends of the program from early on, as the folks at Golf Channel have been too. So it's just an opportunity really to do a little bit more visual elements. Last week we counted down Andy's favorite golf courses in Michigan, and with visual elements there, and talked about. Certainly, we did this mule wheel for potential Ryder Cup players. So there's like opportunities to add more visual elements for the same, hopefully, shotgun start audience in that voice as well.
I hope that Ryan Armour, maybe you name the wheel after him. I mean, isn't he kind of like the original mule? That's hilarious and funny. And again, CBS Sportsnet, Wednesdays noon Eastern time for the new TV show. You know, Brendan, I was just talking before the break about this report from Detroit TV affiliate that the Rocket Classic might be getting the final date of the regular season starting next year. And it makes me think about what else might be done in terms of altering, changing. As you look at the PGA Tour schedule, what do you think is plausible, and what do you think they should really examine as far as tweaking and altering the schedule going forward?
You know, I think, Gary, I heard your proposals there before the break, and I think it's interesting. I do think they need to explore pushing the envelope, right? And maybe Brian Rolep's the one to do that. But I found this whole let's call it Memorial stretch, maybe end of May, beginning of June. It's kind of always been not everyone's sort of satisfied, not happy. There's been so many changes over the years, and I'd say it's constant state of tinkering outside of the majors, right? We used to play Memphis the week before the U.S. Open. We used to play Canada the week after the Open Championship. I remember the grand old AT&T National in my home area of Washington, D.C. Really, the only one that's been constant is sort of the little boat that could, the little ship that could in the John Deere Classic. This week's event out in the middle of the country, and it's sort of satisfied, owned its identity, and stayed where it is. And I think, you know, it's just a constant state of tinkering. The Rocket Classic has gone, you know, before the Open, after the Open. We've added Minnesota to the schedule. I do think it's an opportunity to go more Midwest, more northerly, go to Chicago. I think you do have to add some events of significance past the Travelers, as you noted, and before the playoffs. The season tends to end with the whimper for me. I understand there's a lot of money, there's points, there's status for the subsequent year on the line, but it seems like we're always exhausted by the time we get past the Open, right? And people want to go outside and play golf. They're done watching golf, and they've been watching it for 6, 7, 8 months, at least the hardcore audience. And that's sort of antithetical to most sports, where you're crescendoing at the end. And of course, golf is unique with its major championships. But I think that's a massive challenge for Brian Rolep and others, is how do you make that conclusion feel more like a celebration, a championship, a festival, whether it's 1 week, 3 weeks, or an entire month, as you suggested, leading into it.
Yeah, look, I think all your points are good. I think the one thing that I look at, you mentioned the Midwest, and you mentioned the idea that post-Travelers, if you think about it, I'm not trying to sound myopic as somebody who can't watch golf from outside this country. I think the Scottish and the Open kind of fortnight is great, because in this country, you watch golf early in the morning, you still have the balance of your day. It's like lunchtime, and I've watched a lot of golf, and I still have the rest of my day. I think the co-sanction aspect of the Scottish is a big win. But the domestic schedule in July is so sleepy. Like, from the Travelers until the first playoff event, you may not see Scottie Scheffler, in all likelihood, or Rory, and I can keep going, not hit a golf shot in the United States for 6 weeks. That's not good for business.
No, it's not. I'd honestly propose that, do they go to Europe more often? We talked to Victor Hovland ahead of the Travelers, and you know, he wants to go to Norway. We've seen him out in Norway throughout the summer, right? Playing with like local communities, with fans and gathering crowds in Norway. I think a lot of these players, now the Texas-based players, the American, the Florida-based player, may not be interested in spending extended time in Europe. We've seen Billy Horschel try to advocate for that more in recent years as well. And he's one that's open to it. But it feels like a hybrid sense of schedule. Why keep trying to force the issue? We've seen this now for 20-some plus years where it's just a constant state of tinkering around the majors and then figure it out in August with the playoffs. Why try to force the issue? Why try to make it? Why try to force significance upon things when we've seen it decades now, where it's just constant state of tinkering? That's not to suggest it's been outright failure. I don't think it's been that at all. The ratings are strong and continue to increase this year. I don't think it's failure, but it does feel like it's just sort of this forced arrangement, right? This forced marriage of just everyone just has to be satisfied with the status quo. And it does seem like an opportunity to really lean in to Europe, really embrace sort of a more world global schedule, a quote unquote strategic alliance. That's maybe my sort of fever dream that I would love and fantasy that I would prefer to, go to the Travelers, then get out of Dodge and go to Europe for a month, 6 weeks, 5 weeks, whatever it is. That to me would be ideal as a golf fan, maybe not for a commercial interest or the business side of the tour.
No. Listen, I honestly, I was driving in this morning thinking, could they do 3 weeks? Like, could you do the week after the opener? Or in your, to your example, by the way, the interview with Hovland on the show was terrific, and that gets to a point I'm going to get to in a moment. The last thing with respect to scheduling is the whole idea of what August is. I was completely for the idea of lining up majors, and May made sense, and it opened up quarters in the country, and knowing that the PGA is going to Frisco. You're not playing the PGA Championship in August in Frisco. It was hard enough for the ladies in mid to late June. It's like a blast furnace. However, August is a challenge. Do you expect those three events to see change over the next 3 to 5 years? Locale, and maybe even format in the case of one of them?
Do I expect? No. Should they? Absolutely yes. Unequivocally yes. I'm with you. August, look, they want to get out of the way of football. I understand it from a scheduling perspective. But as we know, the tour has a lot of masters to serve, and there are partners in some of those markets in Memphis, Atlanta, that are very important to the tour. I understand slotting into August. They have to get out of Memphis and Atlanta in August. Why? That makes no sense. I understand you could go there occasionally, but to be so anchored to those sites in August, I think adds to the exhaustion, both for the player clearly, but also the golf fan. This is a great opportunity to spread the gospel of the tour. Go north, go to the Pacific Northwest,
yes.
Rotate those to major markets. And so, yes, I'm with you. In August probably is the right time, but you have to get out of those anchor sites.
Yeah, it's Memphis and Atlanta are the only two places I get hot watching golf on television. Let me ask you about the media and these elite players. And I don't want to just center this on Collin Morikawa, but Collin Morikawa up until this year was this diligent, studious, fastidious guy that was so placid in terms of the eyes of the consumer. And now he's had these multiple kind of odd, kind of uncomfortable, confrontational, mildly dust-ups with the media. There have been a few others. How would you generally characterize the relationship between golf media and the elite in the game?
The elite players, I would say it's mildly strained to skeptical these days. I think there's been a few high-profile incidents. Obviously, Rory skipping the press, Collin Morikawa really since Bay Hill in March. That's been an ongoing issue. Shane Lowry has frequently addressed some disdain or articulated some disdain for his press obligation and relationship with the press. I think it's strained. I don't think it's anything dramatic. The attention has been significant. I think maybe because there's less to talk about, there's less to discuss. There's just been a few dust-ups. I think the players need to understand the press are conduits for them, right? Even if they're saying things that the press may not agree with or maybe panned or critiqued, their insight is wanted. There's few people in the world who can speak to the issues, speak to the talent, speak to the challenges that they face. We can't do that. We can speculate, But it's great to hear players talk about mud balls and what it means for their game, what it means for the challenge of the day. Now, there may be some criticism for them from the Twitter, loudmouths, peanut gallery. People don't have to agree with their point of view, but the point of view needs to be here, and needs to be heard. And I would say, the golf press is it's far from incisive. I went to school in Boston in the early 2000s, and the Boston media on the Red Sox at that time, it was pretty contentious. I don't think the elite golf pros are facing anything comparable to what politicians and major professional athletes in other sports might have to face. So I do think it's been strained, but I think it's been a little also overblown lately, just based on a few, incidents here or there.
Yeah, you going to school up there, and first of all, the Boston Globe sports section, the people who wrote in that, it was the 27 Yankees, the lineup of columnists, and they weren't looking to T-bone people, but if they were critical, it hurt. Same for me, growing up outside of New York City and reading the Daily News, the New York Post, and the Newsday, and you can go on and on. I'm with you. Look, I think overall, the relationship is actually, I would describe it more on the warm side than tepid to cold. Yeah. I mean, it just is, but these few incidents, because they're so few and far between, I think it makes it seem as if it's more contentious than it actually is. All right, let's you and I do the Keegan thing again here, because you were one of the first guests on this program when we launched, and you and I both looked at each other from afar and went, this ain't happening. This can happen. Brendan, it's happening, isn't it?
Yeah, it's happening. I think I also said it's crazy, it's insane. It's still crazy, it's still insane, even though it's happening, but it's got to happen. Look, he's one of the best 12 players for sure, probably one of the best 8 American golfers right now. We saw it beyond just the Travelers win. He's been posted top 10s. It's happening. Now, the problem is who's the captain? Should he be the captain? He says he's not relinquishing that duty, even though he is clearly one of the best American golfers. So they're going to have to figure out some arrangement. It seems like Webb Simpson will be delegated some further duties. You have Kevin Kisner also in the team room. Brandt Snedeker, some of these first-time, quite honestly, not just, first-time assistants, right? So it's going to be an inexperienced, quote-unquote, captain room, but certainly experienced Ryder Cup and President's Cup team room experience. It's an interesting dynamic. I can't imagine the Euros are shaking in their boots about it. It adds probably a complication that they're happy to welcome. But I don't think, they're going to – it's not ideal for something that's become such big business. Every little margin has been studied. Every little detail has been broken down, whether by data analysis or some larger microscope. It adds to the complication. So he's playing. I don't know. It's not a good idea. It's not ideal. But This is where we are. He has to play, and I think Webb Simpson will just carry on more duties and others to be named. He said 4th captain, another assistant captain. So they'll work it out.
At the beginning, it was, well, if I'm the top 6, then look, I feel like I have an obligation to play, and I'm paraphrasing. Yeah. And it was kind of the belief that, well, I wouldn't pick myself. But to what you just said, he's not like weak 9th in terms of standings. He's like strong 9. Like there's no doubt, you and I both agree, based on the performance of the Americans in terms of their depth chart, unequivocally, he's one of the better players. But my position, and I think you feel the same way, is you can't be the best at either if you want to do both. And if anybody says, well, why can't you? I'm not trying to be glib, because you can't. Because you can't. Because the weightiness of the position of captain, one of the primary responsibilities, Brendan, as you know, is to shield your team from as much noise as you can because of how unusual the week is. So he's now the human shield while also hitting golf shots. No way you can be the best at both trying to do both.
Yeah, it's a challenge. It's very simple. It's very simple. There's a reason the Euros are probably welcoming this development.
Yes.
Like, if he plays well on Friday, does he go out again Friday afternoon? What's the plan? He could be great. And so then he's the captain. Is he playing 5 sessions? Probably not. But if he's playing well, is he putting himself back in? Who's he pairing himself with? It's just complicating matters. It's very simplistic here. This isn't some great analysis that needed to understand why this is less than ideal.
The last thing I'll say on this, I had John Wood on last week, and he wasn't. He is part of this group as the manager now of USA Ryder Cup, and he said, look, he may only play one session a day. It's like, okay, you've already conceded that you're making accommodations for him because of his other role, as opposed to him just simply being a member of the team. That, to me, if you're making a concession based on that, you're already showing that you're working around something, which is something you don't want to do. All right, let's get to somebody who I know is happy about this, and that is Rory. Rory's year is going to be remembered in the long form as one of the great things that we've seen in a long, long time. Will he do something big before the end of the year? Nothing is touching April. I know that. But will he have something that will create some really amazing bow for him on 2025? Does your intuition say yes?
The intuition says yes. Big, it gives me a little bit of room to run.
Yes.
I think he's going to come into Portrush ready and refreshed. I think he's going to be ready to go. I think he's going to place a massive emphasis on that in a way he probably, if we're being honest, did not place on Quail Hollow, maybe even Oakmont as well, as he talked about trying to figure out how to come down from the mountaintop. I think the mindset's going to be entirely different for the final major, obviously in his home at Portrush. I think it's going to be a different mindset. Refocus. Seemed to change for him there on Sunday at Oakmont. He started talking to the press, seemed much more gregarious, was again that the next week at Travelers. He's going to be in Europe and totally refreshed. I do think it's going to be a different Rory for Portrush, and something big may happen there.
All right, last thing, you mentioned Brian Rolap. Do you have a sense of what you think his top priority is, or what do you think it should be? Because the LIV thing, which was always the front burner item of arena unification, détente, call it whatever you want, alliance, doesn't seem to be as hot or as much of a priority. And again, you mentioned the word conduit. That's kind of what I'm getting from players. It's, okay, they're there. We'll figure it out. Maybe we won't. What do you think Rolap's first big priority is or should be?
Well, I don't think the house is on fire. So I don't expect an immediate change. The business speak has been deploying capital. Let's just call it spending cash. They got a bunch of money from the Strategic Sports Group. That feels like a priority. I don't think they have I think there are options, right? We've heard, there may be an interest in acquiring a piece of the Ryder Cup or PGA of America. So I think it's quote unquote deploying capital. It is sort of an immediate sort of focus as soon as he comes in. And then we've already heard him talk about the next television rights deal. It seems far off, but he's been an expert. That's been an area of focus for him with the NFL. I expect that while that's not first priority here in 2025, it is a top of mind. So I think that's going to be a massive thing he's focusing on right away, and then figuring out how to spend some of the capital they have and haven't really touched since it came in.
No, they have not. Deploying capital, a very militant term, one that I don't intend to use going forward, but I'm so glad that you delivered it here this morning. Thank you as always. Always appreciate the time.
Thanks, Gary. Really appreciate it.
All right, there's Brendan Porath, head of content Friday. They've got their new TV show. All their stuff is so good in every area of the industry of golf. We take a break, come back. It is qualifying day for the Open Championship. It is not golf's longest day like it is here in the United States, but it is very, very significant. 20 spots. We'll get to some names. We got golf. They're about midway through because all of the 36 holes, the first morning sessions at these four qualifying sites, pretty much in the books. We'll update you on some names and who is trying to get into the last major of the year on the men's side. We're back here on 5 Clubs Golf Channel. It is SiriusXM's Channel 92, PGA Tour Radio. Back right after this. Welcome back in this Tuesday edition of 5 Clubs here on Golf Channel. You can also listen, that is Channel 92, Sirius XM's PGA Tour Radio. And this segment brought to you by Pinehurst, the cradle of American golf. And every time I go there, it seems like they've got something new for me and for you because they're always improving. They've got a new restaurant that's going to open this fall in the main resort, Station 21. Can't wait to try that. Of course, the construction of Pinehurst number 11, Core Crenshaw, coming as well with 10 golf courses, all the restaurants, and all of the different offerings to stay while you play, including the new cottages at number 8. Always a good reason to make a trip to Pinehurst. One thing, I mentioned Ben Crenshaw's name. I saw a picture yesterday. I was lucky enough, as I pointed out yesterday, to be at Sandhills. I pinged Ben a photo of me and Gil Hance on his porch last Thursday, and his response was, "I'll be there Monday. I'll just miss you." And saw a picture that his wife Julie posted of him at that golf course. And I can't imagine the source of pride that he and Bill Core have and feel about what that place has meant, not only to people in that area, but people all over the world to make the journey to go there. It's great to see Ben back at Sandhills yesterday. All right, today is final qualifying for the Open Championship. 300 golfers for 20 spots, and they have 4 locations. And so each location has 5 spots, different from the United States. And we take a look at these venues, Burnham and Barrow, Dundonald Links, Royal St. Ports, a lot of people call it Deal. That I've never been there. I've heard it's wonderful. West Lancashire or Lancashire, depending on your accent or where you're from. So those are the 4 venues. And there you see a lot of the notable entries there. And you see the A accompanying the names of Luke Poulter. Obviously, Ian's son, who's at the University of Florida, Tyler Weaver, who is at Florida State. Both those young men just played at the Arnold Palmer Cup that we did the show from several weeks ago at Congaree. They're in the field today in different locations. And then you see a lot of names of players who play on LIV. And Lucas Herbert, Sam Horsfield actually, he did not even start this morning, was in one of the field sites. Graham McDowell shot 2 under this morning. Audubon Lahiri. Adrian Moronk is not playing well. Andy Ogletree. Ian needs to have a super low round this afternoon. He is at the site where his son Luke is currently 5 under, shot 67 this morning. David Puig from Spain, another LIV player. He is leading at his respected site. Caleb Surratt, the young man who went to the University of Tennessee, who's also playing LIV, as is Peter Uihlein. Harold Varner. Harold did not play particularly well in his morning round. Lee Westwood. Lee, I think, shot 2 under, as did Graham McDowell. Both those. Lee is in better position through one round than Graham is. But again, these are 20 spots available today at those 4 sites, so 5 each. So obviously, Golf Channel later on this afternoon with full wrap-up of the players that made their way through. And again, you see names there that we are familiar with, but that's the beauty of the Open Championship, is that as much as we are far more familiar because of the existence of this network starting in 1995 and being able to watch the DP World Tour on a week in and week out basis that starts on Thursday mornings early, and they travel all over the globe. There's a greater familiarity now to players that pop up on Open Championship leaderboards than there were. But I will even say last year, Dan Brown, you're going, okay, everybody knows a Dan Brown. Dan Brown hung around last year. Tristan Lawrence, who actually, again, had another week at the U.S. Open a couple of weeks ago. You may have had a modest familiarity of them, but that is why the Open Championship always feels a little bit different, feels even more global than the U.S. Open, even though the U.S. Open has added international qualifying sites, which gets me to the R&A and one wrinkle that they've added starting next year. And let me just say, there are certain initiatives and certain things, whether it be the PGA of America, PGA Tour, R&A, USGA, that you go, All right, and even Augusta National. Augusta National has added what is, for them, it's not something that they embed and say that going forward in perpetuity, we're going to have an invitation to the NCAA individual champion. But that's the strong likelihood is that that player is going to get an invitation, as is true of the Asia Pacific Amateur Championship, Latin America Amateur Championship, and down the line. The R&A has made the decision starting next year at Royal Birkdale to add one qualifying spot on Monday of the Open Championship week at Royal Birkdale. A dozen players, and we don't know necessarily what the makeup of those players are going to be, but a last chance qualifier day on Monday of the Open Championship. Are you kidding me? How good is this? I think it's fantastic. And I'm not asking, I'm not just mildly requesting, I'm begging the United States Golf Association to follow the lead of their partner, the R&A, when it comes to constructing the rules of golf that is abided by in championship golf around the world, to do the same thing. And if they want to do it, start next year at Shinnecock, don't just think about it. Let's make it happen. But think about a dozen players on Monday at Shinnecock, hypothetically, starting next year, going out in, let's say it's four threesomes and playing for that final spot. Not that we needed our appetite to be unhinged even more than it is during a major championship week. But if you look at what the Masters tournament has done to turn Masters Week now into basically, it's always been, to me anyway, the great golf global renewal, that parts of the country that are just kind of thawing out that first week in April, and they're thinking about not just watching golf, but actually playing golf themselves in big parts of this country, that they've given us now the Augusta National Women's Amateur. And we have the drive, chip, and putt on the Sunday before. And then Masters Week starts, and there's nothing particularly like it in the world of golf. And it's not that practice round days at the Open Championship and at the US Open and the PGA are not well attended already. They are. But what if you gave the consumer, as the R&A is going to do starting next year at Birkdale, competition? And think about how wonderful it would be for these 12 players, and is going to be for these 12 players at Birkdale, to get the type of audience as one of them is going to play their way into the championship proper. Bravo. Bravo to the R&A, and I'm just going to say it again to the USGA. Let's make it happen. Follow their lead. We come back, some final thoughts and final notes on a Tuesday edition of Five Clubs on Golf Channel right after this. Welcome back in. Last couple of minutes here on this Tuesday. Just to note, tomorrow I will be originating from the French Lick Resort down there in French Lick, Indiana. I've never been. Looking forward to being there. Got an underrated event, Steph Curry's great underrated junior golf tour. This segment, though, brought to you by Golf Pride when it comes to grips. Players at all levels, whether it's the elite player, more importantly, you, the recreational golfer, trust Golf Pride through the bag more than any grip company in the world. Some news when it comes to recruiting in golf, and you know, that is a very kind of cottage industry, very modest, kind of, you know, quiet. You don't know that much about these players, but you know more now. But you know Miles Russell's name if you're watching this network. Miles Russell has made a verbal commitment to Florida State. He's from the state of Florida. It appears anyway that he's going to play collegiate golf. He's been on this program. So that is a huge get for a program that has got great players. Luke Clanton is just leaving Florida State with a tour card in pocket. Trey Jones, one of the best college coaches in America. That is one of the great gets, more aware gets that we have seen when it comes to a junior golfer making a commitment verbally to play college golf, wherever it might be. Certainly Charlie Woods, that's a different category whenever that happens. But Miles Russell verbally committing to Florida State is news. All right, I end with some sad news, and that is the passing of what was a person who was one of the great friends in golf, passes away at the age of 95, Betty Probasco, who anybody who knew her not only as an elite amateur golfer, 8 times won the Tennessee State Amateur Championship. I knew her when I was a young assistant golf professional at Seminole Golf Club. She was one of the most delightful, warm, caring people I've ever been around. She won the club championship at Seminole 13 times, captained the Curtis Cup team in 1982. Her and her husband, Scotty Probasco, again, 2 of the great friends in golf that I've ever had the great pleasure of knowing. She lived a glorious life, and obviously golf was a huge part of her life, but she enriched the lives of others through just merely being a wonderful, caring person. And one time, in a one-day member guest at Seminole, she and 3 other women made 2 1s and 2 2s on the 5th hole at Seminole. Think about that. Godspeed to a great lady. Have a wonderful Tuesday. We'll see you tomorrow.